Perfect.
Today's guest is a classically trained photographer working in Nova Scotia, Canada, under the business name of Kristine Richer Photography. She completed 2 undergraduate degrees way back when the world still only used film. She then worked as a commercial product photographer and a product designer for 11 years, as well as a photographer educator. She's taught photography at the NSCAD University and made the leap back in 2020 to become a full-time nightscape artist, which I'm really excited to explore in today's conversation. She's also an educator in nightscape art and photography and mentors thousands of students from around the world. A big welcome to today's guest, Kristine Richer.
Thank you, Michelle. Hello. You did it. You got it all. I like how you did NASCAD for NSCAD University. It's great. Thanks for having me, Michelle. It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah, I didn't coach you on how to say that one first.
No, I know. I did a bit of Googling as well to see, but I didn't give myself enough time. But anyway, there we go. We got it out. We got it out.
We're there.
Massive welcome. So Kristine and I know each other through a mastermind that we are in, and we met last year, wasn't it? Last September.
Yeah, it was.
And I have been so inspired by Kristine's journey into this crazy world of nightscape Milky Way photography. We're going to go through all of this in today's conversation with Kristine, because she's set up the most incredible business teaching, creating prints of her beautiful photography and art. And so I'm so excited that you're here with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. I'm excited to get to just like talk about art and photography and all the things, you know?
Yeah.
It's gonna be great.
I think we should jump right back, actually. Can you remember the very first time you ever like picked up a pencil or created a piece of artwork? Do you remember?
Yeah. In general, no, I can't go back to a specific one. My memory for specific events is not fantastic. However, it's just normal as a kid to be like painting things or drawing, or, you know, sometimes I remember having paints and stuff outside. We lived very rurally here in Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia is on the east coast of Canada. So I lived at the end of a kilometer-long dirt road in the middle of nowhere on 5 acres of treed land and stuff, right? So it was very just kind of normal to like paint outside on the back deck, look at some trees, you know, like all of that. It was just kind of part of it. Yeah.
Okay. So art was around you growing up, and then at what point did you turn to photography? Was that part of your childhood, or was that as an adult?
Yeah, I actually have the pictures from this. So because my memory is not fantastic, one of the ways that I remember is through the physical holding of photographs and seeing photographs, and now very much digital ones. But I remember this particular thing that I did with my mom, and I had a camera. It wasn't at the point at which I got a quote unquote good camera. I was 15 when that happened, but I had this it was like a little point and shoot camera, and I really wanted to take pictures of a waterfall. There's no waterfalls where we live. We're in the middle of the woods. Like it's not that. So instead we went to the pond that my dad had kind of hand dug out in the front. And I set up a bunch of rocks, and my mom had a huge jug of water, and she's pouring the water over the rocks, and I'm taking the pictures like super close up. And so I remember I was like, I thought this was great. We also had a ton of cats. So I'm going to come off as crazy cat lady, but you know what? I'm okay with it. We had lots and lots of cats. I mean, like dozens of cats running around the property because I fed a stray cat when my mom told me not to. Anyways, and then my dad.
And they were all like, yeah, this is the place we should be.
And my dad was like, yeah, we can keep them. And I'm sure my mom was just like, oh. Anyways. But so I also used to set up the cats, lots of kittens, and I would create little like mini dioramas. And I made a mini broomstick, and I put an apron on a kitten, and I wrote on a thing, and it says all in a day's work. Like, anyways. So I don't know. I got really creative apparently.
Was that in childhood? Was that like last week?
I know. Last week, Michelle. That was childhood. I was quite young. My first real camera I got when I was 15. My godfather, Klaus, sent me money. My mother was from Switzerland, born and raised. And so I didn't get to really meet most of my family over there. So he was just like, normally godparents do stuff for the kids. So he just sent me a sum of money. And so I used that to buy my first SLR camera, film camera, just in case everyone's wondering. I'm not going to say when that was, but way back when I was 15. And so that was my first like quote unquote real camera. And I got that just before I was 15. Yeah.
Oh, wow. And so you'd already been playing then with photography, with the waterfall. I love that story so much. What good parents you have.
Right. Yeah.
And then, so when you got that camera, so that was at 15. And then talk us through what was happening then. Were you like literally using it every day? Was it something that you kind of put down, pick back up again?
I couldn't use it every day because film was expensive. I don't know. People now, like, it's so hard to imagine. Like, I took probably 100 photos on my phone yesterday going to the beach and like around a local town with my kids and one of their friends. But like to get a 36 roll of film, it could take you a week or 2 weeks to fill that. It was like, this was a thing. This is my film. This is special. So I, at the time, had been living in the memory of like one of my first rolls of film that I did was when I was living in Ohio with my mother and my stepfamily at the time. And we lived in a very interesting location that was across from something called Rain Rock. And it was literally this huge boulder cave system, but rain came down through the rocks and there was a waterfall. And it was just a very beautiful location in like middle of nowhere, Ohio, very, very middle of nowhere. And I remember spending time exploring that whole area and filling up this like first roll of film, and I still have images from that roll of film. Yeah, it was pretty wonderful. I'm sure I would have created a lot more if I had like lots of film and the ability to get all of that film processed. But yeah, it was very much like a precious thing for me. Like I'm going to explore and photograph the things that are important to me. Is how I kind of approached it. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think that has impacted, and it must have, I guess, in a way, the work that you create or did create and how you saw the world at that time? Because if you've got that preciousness around this film and the fact that to take this image, you want to do the best that you can. So I guess that really made you then start to process the composition and the lighting. And did that all start to naturally come to you as you were... I
don't know if it came to me if I was any good. There was zero formal training of any point of any type at that point. And even like the high schools that I went to, I know some people would be like, yeah, we had a dark room in our high school. I was like, that would have been cool. There was nothing in terms of photography. And when you looked at like the art classes and things that were going there wasn't a lot, like we didn't generally learn about lighting or composition or things like that. So for me, it was more so, I would say, the act of using the camera as an exploration for things that mattered to me, learning about the actual visual aesthetics and all the things that go into it. That didn't come until I went to university, I would say.
Oh, I love that then. So in that moment of being a child with your camera with only so much film, you are kind of then really witnessing like the true part of why art matters, really connecting with what matters to you. I love that phrase that you just came out with. That's a really nice special moment, isn't it? Because I think as a child, for me, I don't think I had that. For me, I was drawing and painting, and so it was kind of fast and whatever came out. But so you had a completely different viewpoint. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Was it frustrating for you at the time with that limitation on film, or did you actually enjoy that process of you have to then go and process it and see what comes out. Was
Come
it
back.
exciting?
Oh yeah, it was exciting. It was exciting.
Yeah.
Now, if like past Kristine could know how the world exists today, oh, I would have been frustrated. You know what I mean? Like, can I even imagine going back there and being like, by the way, you're gonna have this phone that you can talk to people anywhere in the world at any time and get on the internet, which you don't know what that is yet, and take hundreds and thousands of photos. Like that would have been mind blowing. But I don't ever remember being frustrated. It was always just like, this is special. And then you like when you finally get the package, like I can't believe that people now don't know what it's like to get that package of 4x6s with your little sheets of film in behind, and you get that and you're like, yeah, I gotta look at it and see the photo. It's like, this is the best feeling in the world. Yeah. Right.
I love that so much. And so then you went through school with your camera in tow, and then did you know then as a young adult that was your destiny, that you were going to be in photography, or what were you thinking as you were kind of entering adulthood?
That's a really good question. So yeah, I that was the type of thing where there was a lot of things growing up that I could talk about not having and access to different things. But I kind of made the decision going from grade 11 into grade 12, because here in Canada, we go grade 12 and then going to university after, because I know we have people listening from all over and it's different.
Yeah.
So I made the decision going into grade 12 to stay in art. And there was an advanced like calculus, pre-calculus kind of classes in math. And they were in the same block as art. And I went into art, and I'm very good with math. And my math teacher was furious with me. What are you doing? You're throwing your life away. I can't believe you're going to go into art. Why would you do that? You have so much potential. You have so much promise. Like all of the things. And I made the decision around then that no, I'm not going to do these things that you're supposed to do. I'm not going to take this route just because I'm very smart. So you can have graduate with honors or honors with distinction. So I was honors with distinction, like top of my class kind of thing. And I was just like, that's not what I want to do. I want to be an artist. And so I didn't even, like with my academics, I could have applied to many different universities. I applied to one. I applied to NSCAD University. NSCAD's confusing. It's the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, but it's a university, so it's called NSCAD University. Anyways, we have in Canada, we have NSCAD, OCAD, and ACAD, Ontario College of Art and Design, and Alberta. I only applied to NSCAD. I applied to anything else. I was like, this is it. I'm doing this or I'm not doing anything. And I got in on a conditional acceptance. So I didn't even fully get in. I got in. They were basically like, we see some potential here. We will review you after your first semester and see if you are accepted into the university. Spoiler alert, I got A's through all of my first semester. And they were like, you can stay. And I was like, thanks, appreciate it. Yeah.
What a different path it would have been if you hadn't. I wonder
right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And so at that time, were your family supportive of that decision too, to go into the arts? There wasn't any conflict there. That's
no,
good.
there was none. And that was something that I didn't even realize the extent to which it exists for people. It was not a thing. My mom, my dad were supportive. My brothers were like, yeah, do whatever. My brothers are 5 and 7 years older than me. So at that time, we did not have the relationship that we have now, but they're like, oh, whatever, do what you do. I don't care. Sorry. Probably at least one of them is going to watch this and they'll probably be like, yeah, that's accurate. But I remember getting to university and having these conversations with students coming, because students come to NSCAD University from across the world, from across Canada. We have a lot of international students. And they would be like, like, I'm here on a scholarship. My parents wouldn't pay for me. Like they wouldn't, and so on and so forth. And I was like, oh, hold on. What do you mean? Like, I didn't realize to the extent that people would get upset that they were actually going to art university instead of quote unquote doing something with their life.
And no, it's so prevalent. And I would imagine people listening now have been told the same thing at some point in their lives, especially at school. We hear that so often. And so it's nice that you had the support of your family, because I think when you've got it coming from all angles, it can really derail people. You start to question everything. Was there any, I know you were just so certain that you were going into that college. I love that was your only option. Was there any seed of doubt when you heard your kind of teachers saying, you should be going down this road? Did it ever confuse you at any point, or were you just dead set that this is what I want to do?
No, it didn't confuse me. I'm pretty much like, once I make a decision on something, I'm like, all right, this is what I'm doing. This is now the path. I tend to take a while to come to that, like the seed or the idea plants, and then I just kind of like, I just let it be for a while, and I just let it kind of like grow and turn into whatever it is. And then at some point, I just am like, this is it, and I follow my intuition. And once I make a decision, like I am all in on the decision. There is no course correction from the decision. There's like, you can go down this side road or this side road, but it's still the same place, and that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, but that focus, often is what you see in successful people that kind of drive towards something, and there's no other way. And it doesn't matter how long it takes you to get there. You just you you're going there, and that's quite a nice trait to have, isn't it? So then you went through university. Did I read you have 2 degrees? There were 2 degrees there? Yeah, wow. That was busy time.
I guess so I'll say this, Michelle knows this, but and other people in my audience will know it, but I was recently diagnosed with ADHD, and looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Because I definitely like find things that I'm interested in, and I'm just like all in, like it's like, oh no, I can't imagine not doing this. Now I just completely want to do this. And so I was in university, and the first year, it's very much like a feeling it out year. Many people at the art university, because it's not just photography, it is like, it's all of the fine arts, and then it's also media arts, like it's across the board of visual art, basically. And so you have to do, back when I was doing it, which was in the early 2000s, you have to do your open studio courses. And so there's one that's just like an open visual art course. And so, I had to like paint with gouache, and I was like, what am I doing? And paint with all kinds of different things, and draw and try mixed media and all that. But then they had the second semester, there was only one of the studio courses was a prerequisite. Only one. And it was intro to studio design. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but it's the only one here that's a prerequisite of anything. So I was like, I'll just take it. Let's just see what happens. And I remember Kristine Hunt-Holzer was the professor at the time. She actually turned into the dean of the university for a while when I was working there. And I just fell in love with design, like the form and the function and the ability to create things in a way that is visually appealing, that can then mean that people can actually interact with it in a more functional way. Like it was mind blowing. And so I went to the registrar and I was like, hey, I'd like to do a double major. And they're like, oh, no, you can't do that. Like, design is under the Bachelor of Design and photography is under the Bachelor of Fine Arts. Those are 2 separate. You don't double major. And I was like, well, I want to do both of them. And they're like, well, you could do a double degree. They're like, but that's really hard work. We would have to plan everything out right now, and you'd have to do an extra at least 1.5 years. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And so from I planned it out with the registrar. I knew every single course I was going to take. I did summer semester and then 1 extra year. And I did my 2 degrees.
So you did them at the same time,
5 years. Yeah, I did. I did everything concurrently. So I would be taking my photography and design classes all at the same time. Yeah.
Okay, that's impressive.
It was really, I enjoyed it. It was, sometimes like in art university, there are free courses. And so like my friends would do like screen printing or bookbinding. I'm like, oh, that would be really cool. I had 2 free courses in my very final year. And instead of doing something fun like screen printing or book design, I actually convinced the major university that we have here, Dalhousie University, it's where people go to be doctors and all of the things. I convinced them to let me into their 3rd year environmental studies program. And I did my 2 open credits each semester at Dalhousie in environmental studies instead. It was super fun. It was super fun. I went into all these people who they're in their third year of environmental studies. I've taken nothing. And they're like, oh, look at this artsy girl coming in here. Anyways, we had a play once. They made me do all the pieces for it. I was like, guys, artist, not performer. Anyways,
Yeah, when you
they
get
did
labeled
not
as
see.
artist, they think you can do anything. Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. They didn't see the distinction. And I was like, introvert. Anyways, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
Wow. So you accumulated all this amazingness at uni, and then so the photography was still prevalent at this point, or was this? Yeah.
Photography was always my first love. Design, I loved. I also, so the undercurrent of all of this, going through the entirety of this, is you cannot make money as an artist. You will be a starving artist. You will live off of government grants. And this is the unfortunate thing, is that it also was reinforced in the university to really a great degree. Like our entrepreneurship courses, they're laughable at this point. With what I've learned in business now, I look back and I'm like, there was nothing useful. Now, did art university turn me into a very confident artist? Yes, 100%. I absolutely loved it for everything in terms of creating, etc. But the mindset that I came out of it with, and that I went into it with, was very much like, I need to find a way to make money as an artist. And so design was something that I really, really enjoyed, and that I thought was more employable than a photographer. Yeah. Photography was always the thing that I was like, this is where my heart is at. But I also really like design, and I think I can probably get hired as a designer. And then I'll have the photography background too.
Yeah. And I still know people who are at art school today now with that same mindset. I spoke to a student the other week, and I said, what are you going to do afterwards? And she said, well, I'll go down the design route because I know I can earn more money. And I was like, wow, still, right? That is the perception, that as an artist, you can't do that. And I said, well, and she's studying fine art, but she's going to switch it to design purely because of the money. And I said, what about being an artist? And she just laughed at me. So there's still today, students going through with that mindset. So this is why this also important. Yeah,
it really is, because I think too, there's also this other trope of selling out as well. Like if you are making money through your work, if you are monetizing through your work, if you are selling your work, then you are selling out. You're selling your artist's soul. Like that's such a big thing that people internalize, and also the people who have internalized it also tend to verbalize it loudly sometimes. Or others who potentially don't understand it will make comments like that, and people think it's bad to make money from their art. Like, I'm just creating something that I love. Why should I make money from it? And it's like, well, why should people make money from doing things that they hate all day long? You know what I mean? Like, wouldn't it be better to make money from doing something that you love and putting out like light and love and wonderfulness into the world? Anyways, yeah.
It's a good point. And so at what point then did that turn for you? So after graduating, what was the pathway then? We're all dying to know how you got onto the nightscape.
Where did I get here? All right, we'll go along. It's a long and winding road, isn't it? Yes. So, okay. I'll try and keep this short. After university, I got hired almost immediately into a company called Orb, which is called Orb Factory, but they just got turned into Orb. It was a toy company. So kids, educational arts and crafts thing. It was very small when I got hired. I think there was maybe 8 people, and a woman who I went to university with was hired on as a designer. But the owner of the company had been doing all the photography. So I just graduated. So I applied. I got hired on to be a junior designer, product designer. Product design was my specialty in university. And then photographer. And so I ran the photography studio, and I worked as a designer there. I did that. I was in that job for 11 years. Wow. At the same time, I was also teaching photography at NASCAD. I started teaching photography at NASCAD University in 2008, and I got hired on at Orb in 2009. And so that was great. That was fantastic. I got to work with a bunch of people I went to university with. I had a really amazing art director who came in. We headhunted her from a company in the US, and she actually moved up here. I can't say the actual company she got headhunted from because there was it's a very popular company, and there was actually a lawsuit and things that happened because of it. I had to go and I had to go and testify on the fact that I used rainbows and dolphins on a product without my art director telling me that I had to. Anyways, that was what the lawsuit was about. So it was great. It was fantastic. I worked at this company for the 11 years, but when I left the company, there was something like 150 people there. Like the company just massively grew.
Wow. And so what product design was it, Kristine?
Yeah, kids' toys. So arts and crafts toys.
Fun.
So
Right.
I should have brought out a couple so you could see, but the main product that we had when I first came on was a product called Sticky Mosaics, and it was an art board, and then it's like paint by number, but you would use like foam tiles and gem tiles, and so we would draw the art, and then we would map out where all of the placement of the tiles would go, and then I would do everything. I would do the actual art for the pieces, which was not my strong suit, create the actual packaging for it, source everything. So everything was created overseas. So, my day would look like talking in the morning, talking with our warehouses and with our developers who are over in China and in Hong Kong. I went to China and Hong Kong to the factories where we made things. It was a really cool job. Like, it was a really, really cool job. I can't lie. Like, I got to go to New York for New York Toy Fair. I went to Nuremberg in Germany for the German Toy Fair, the largest international one. It was really cool. It was super cool. I've made products that have sold, tens, hundreds of thousands. I had one particular image because I photographed all of the products, but I was like a fixer in a way. Like, this is gonna sound terrible. I was a fixer for little kids, not in that way. I would get local kids in and photograph them for the packaging and everything. So I had like multiple moms who had the right age range kids in different schools, and they would pull in kids for me. So I had this one photo shoot with these two young girls. They're like in university now. It's ridiculous, but it was printed. The print run was in the millions in Germany. It's so bizarre and so wonderful. Really, really fun. Yeah.
They sound like 11 amazing years, and actually to go from university with those two disciplines and apply it into a job, because it was the design and the photography. I mean, how cool is that? That's amazing.
It was basically perfect. Yeah. And I really, really loved it. And I learned a ton, and I became much better technically at a lot of things. Like, just in general, product photography is a highly technical genre, and then photographing kids is not easy. And I didn't have any kids until the very end. So photographing kids is not easy. But then it did shift, as with anything, it shifts. And there was a new person brought on higher up in the chain who was very, very smart and within the industry. But it shifted from the focus when we were a younger company in the infancy. It shifted to being able to make more money, get into bigger stores and things like that, which is great. A business needs that, but it was providing a product that I just wasn't excited about anymore. Like, the things that we were making, the timeline, I just was like, we started selling certain products and selling a lot of them. I mean, a lot of them. It was just staggering the amount of runs that we would do on these different things we were creating. And I could just see, like, these are going to be used for like a month or two, then they're going to go in the garbage, it wasn't going back to like the environmentalist courses and the stuff. Like, that's something that's very near and dear to me. And I just couldn't see myself continuing to do that. And that was also after the birth of my son, my first son in 2016. Kids have a way of making you reconsider priorities. So that all was shifting and coming into play around then.
Right. Okay. So you just started to then re-navigate. I'm curious to know, during those 11 years before we move on to the next phase of your life.
Yes.
Were you still, I know photography was still important, and especially in work, on the side, were you still exploring photography for your own personal gratification? Like, I guess it was still there. I'm just interested
Yeah.
in the timeline and
Yes.
where photography was in your personal life too.
Yeah. So it definitely was. Now maybe people might describe me as a workaholic. So I worked at Orb. I also taught at NASCAD University. I taught Photoshop and then I taught photography. I also ran my own photography business on the side, just trying lots of different things. A lot of this also stemmed from the can't be a starving artist thing, like need to be productive, need to make money with my work, all of that. That's very much a driver for that period of my life. But yeah, I photographed just about everything that you could think of. Really, like I had a whole stint in food photography, which was really fun because you can eat the food too. That was really great. I did the classic kind of photography. I was a wedding photographer for a while, and then I did families because people get married, then they have babies, and then all of that. That was not my jam. I enjoyed wedding photography from a technical standpoint, but I'm not like in love with the aesthetic. I'm not a very like fashiony kind of person. And so a lot of that around weddings kind of wasn't my jam. And I went into pet photography for a while, and that was really fun. I really, really enjoyed pet photography. And I would probably still do pet photography, except for the fact this is terrible. I have to interact with the people who own the pets.
You just do
nothing against those people. Those people are all lovely. Pet people are my people. I just don't actually want to interact with people. That sounds so terrible. But it's like the logistics and all of that. It just wasn't in me anymore. And so I didn't want to keep doing that. So I specifically with photography, I went through multiple genres. Probably the only genres that I did not actively do. I didn't get into boudoir photography. I didn't go crazy into sports photography, though I did do some sports photography. My husband is a musician as well as an athlete, so I did go into that. And like macro photography, I didn't do that. But otherwise, I was photographing fashion shows. I was in restaurants. I did a lot of corporate work. I did industrial work, like I was on work sites, like just across the board. I have experience with a lot of genres. And that was all money focused because that's where I could easily see that you could make money with those things. I could easily see that photography as a service that people would want. On the side of all of that, for me, I would go out hiking with my dog and take photos all the time. We would just go hiking and I'd just be gone. Like, that's it. My husband would know. We weren't married yet at the time, but Jazz and I, my dog, Jazz, who just passed, but we had her for quite a long time, 13 and a half years. So I would just go out hiking. I'd just go like here, this trail here. We'd go out to lots of beautiful trails in Nova Scotia. And like, it was just me and my camera and Jazz was happy to just run around. And I was happy to sit and take 1,000 photos of waves going by. Like that's what I did for me. I know people who do other things, but I would just hike and take pictures. Yeah.
And do you think that's going back to your kind of like inner child? Because that's where it all kind of began. Do you think that was that kind of revisiting the part where,
100%. Yeah. I'm happiest being out in nature. I grew up in the middle of nature, and I get like antsy. I don't like going to cities. I don't like being in a city for too long. Like I look up, I can't see the stars at night. Like there's not enough nature around. Like I personally don't enjoy it. I try and keep my trips to cities short.
And did you sell at that point any of the kind of personal work that you were drawn to, or was it the commercial aspect was the weddings and the pets? The other part was your own joy.
Yeah, pretty much. I shifted to starting to try to sell my work around after my son was born, a little bit around after he was born. But I didn't even think that it would be something to sell. Like I still had this thought in my head that like, no, landscape photography, like you don't make money as a landscape photographer. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I didn't even try. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then at what point then? So I know that it was when you had your son and you had those late nights and
Mm,
lack of sleep and all of those things that
yeah.
who'd have thought that started to then navigate your entry into what you do now. So tell us about that bit.
Yeah, that's I look back on that fondly now in retrospect. At the time, I don't know, it was a kind of madness potentially. But anyone who has gone through it, a newborn phase with a child will know that it can be very demanding and very difficult, especially with your first. And so the biggest thing that happened for me that I wasn't expecting is that because my me time was me and my dog hiking, and often at sunset, because it's the best light is at sunset, like midday sun. I don't want to take any pictures of that. It's not nice. Sunset, beautiful. Most photographers know, like golden hour. That's when you go out. But it always seemed to be, even though sunset changes, like it's anywhere in the winter, it might be like 5 p.m. and then in the summer it might be between 9 and 10 p.m. here. But even though it changes, it always just seemed with my son that I was like breastfeeding him to bed at sunset. Like I just have all of these moments like sitting in the rocking chair with my son looking at the sunset out the window. And I started to just really miss having time to go out and create. But I didn't want to go out in the middle of the day because to me, the landscapes were boring. I had zero interest in it. And normally there was just too many other things to do. Like, I was so Canadian, so we have maternity leave here for a year. Now it can be longer now, but at the time it was a year. So I was full-time caregiver and et cetera. So I'm with my son trying to do all the things to not completely mess him up later in life, all of that during the day. And then sunset, getting him down to bed. And I found myself in those first months really starting to almost disassociate with my personality. It was just so bizarre. Like I remember like literally, new mom, lost identity, what to do, like Googling it in the middle of the night when I was feeding my son. And then this one night, I just like had this idea where I was like, I miss taking photos. I miss being out. And so I was like, okay, I told my husband, I was like, I'm going to get our son, Oscar, down to bed. He's not going to wake up at least for another 4 hours. I'm going to take Jazz and we're going to go out and take some pictures. Cause I was like, I need to. And it's like, it's nighttime. I was like, I know. We're just going to go. And that's how it started. That was how it started. Yeah.
Wow. So it was just in that moment you just, because I love these stories because obviously the book, Your Art Matters, like there was something inside of you in that moment that had to create and had to, there's like a pull.
Yeah.
And it's powerful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that that is to feed your like creative soul. And I just love that part of all of us. We all have it, don't we?
Yeah, it's so true. And it is the thing where if you look, it's like, well, no, like you're already sleep deprived. You should just go to sleep. And it's like, I know my body technically needs sleep. Like I get that. But in that time, I was like, I need this more. I need that creativity more.
Oh,
So
get chills. I love that so much.
right.
And so tell us about that night then. What happened that night when you went out?
You know what? I wish I could tell you about that specific night. I don't remember. I'm sorry. This is the thing. I'm the worst at like these individual things. I can tell you about multiple nights.
Yeah.
When I first started, it wasn't that my photos weren't that great, which was a wake up call. I talk about this because I teach online. I assumed I'd be good. I know that's terrible, but at this point, I'm like, I have a degree. I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing. And then like, not because I had seen some photos. I had seen like quote unquote Milky Way photos, and I was like, yeah, it's gonna be great. There's a lot. There's a lot of science that goes into Milky Way photography that I knew nothing about at that point. By the way, I had zero astronomy background. So my images actually mostly for the early part turned out to be quite terrible.
Like the moon.
In terms yeah. Yeah, but then I started to learn more. And so then this is also where that hyper focus comes in, right? So at this point, I've now found something that I can do. I enjoy being out at night, and I can wax poetic on all the reasons why I really, really enjoy being out at night. Even now, like the other night, I was gardening outside after the kids were in bed. Like I went outside at 9 o'clock. I put my headlamp on. I was gardening until midnight, and it was just really nice to be outside. I wasn't taking any pictures. I was just gardening by myself. My yard. The neighbors probably think I'm crazy. We don't live. We're
with your nightlight on. That's so
funny. But so I definitely hyper focused on learning and getting better. And then I did start to get better. I learned very quickly. One, because I had the background in order to do it. Like, all the technical in this genre, technical is a huge part of it. It's very, very precise type of photography. But again, if we look back at like my past history, like my brain already works well that way. I have a very technically minded brain anyways. And then I started to learn the things about astronomy and things like that. And as soon as I got all those pieces, it started to click together. And then I was able to start creating images pretty quickly that then like were resonating with people. And that, of course, feeds the dopamine. Right? Then you start creating the work, and then people are like, oh, this is really cool. And you get a lot of really good feedback. And so then I was like, well, I really enjoy doing this. People seem to like the images. I'm just going to keep doing it. Mm-hmm. And I did go back to work after having my son. So I had a year off and I went back to work. And it's kind of funny because there would be like younger girls on the team. It was mostly girl designers on our team. I was one of the more senior people on the team. And some of them would come in and it's like, oh, they're so tired. And it's like, oh yeah, what were you up to last night? Where were you at? But I come in to work super tired. And my art director was like, yeah, it was a clear night last night, wasn't it? I was like, yeah, it was. I'm really tired. I'm sorry. It was never like, oh, Kristine, were you out drinking last night? No. It's like, oh, we know what you were doing, Kristine.
We know where you were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so at that point, did you have a particular spot for nighttime photography, or are you in the camp of like going to different places? Because I know nothing about nightscape.
Yeah. So this is one of the reasons why where I live is great. I had multiple spots because I had already, like, I grew up in Nova Scotia. I don't live where I grew up, but Nova Scotia is not big. Width-wise, it's quite skinny, and then lengthwise, it's longer. But, we can get, in Nova Scotia, it's a peninsula. But it's almost an island. We're connected to the rest of Canada by a very small bit of land, relatively speaking. But you can't be really more than 45 minutes from the ocean driving, unless you're in some like crazy back road, whatever kind of place. But for the most part, you just can't really be that far away from the ocean. And there's also not a lot of people here, which is great for nightscape photography, because one of the biggest issues in this genre of photography is light pollution. So cities, towns, etc. There's lots of light pollution. Nova Scotia does have that, but so much less than everywhere else. I have people who live near where you live, Michelle, and they have to drive a very long time. I have one student in the UK, they don't live around where you are, but they, to get to really good dark skies, it's like an 8-hour drive. Wow. For me, it was a half-hour drive to get to really beautiful dark skies. So I already knew most of the places to go to just because there are already places that I would be hiking at. I just went to them at night instead. And I brought my dog with me and I was fine. I was like, there could be bears, but they're probably not. They're going to go away anyways. There could be coyotes, but they'll probably leave us alone. And my dog would come with me on all my hikes. And I already had beautiful places to go to because I lived near all of these beautiful places already and had been exploring them during the day. Now I just was starting to go at night.
Cool. And so where were you sharing these photographs at that point? Did you have your business at that point, or was it a personal profile? So you had your photography business, which was left over kind of from the previous work.
So I started Kristine Rose Photography. I had Cherry Pie Photography, which I ran with a friend of mine who is a photographer as well, and we ran that together and did weddings and that type of stuff. I started teaching privately. I stopped teaching at the university, and I started teaching privately after my son was born. It was too much. I would be working full-time days and then going to the university, and I would be at the university until 10, 11 o'clock at night. It was too much. So after a semester of that, I was like, I can't keep doing this. So I started teaching privately instead. And I started doing that under Kristine Rose Photography. And I also pretty much stopped taking any client or commission work at that point. I was just like, it doesn't fit in. I don't want to do a wedding. I'm at work all week. I get to see my son in the evening. I'm not going away all weekend to photograph a wedding. Priority wise, like, no, it's not worth it. Can I make a few thousand extra dollars that weekend? Yes, but it's not worth the time. So I had Kristine Rose Photography, and I was mostly sharing pet photography and about the things that I was teaching. And I was mostly teaching general photography. So I had introductory photography classes that I taught. And that's what I've taught for years and years. And I had some other like kind of like Studio 2 or Studio 3 level classes that I taught as well. And then that just kind of organically shifted to me just starting to post the things that I was shooting out at night. And when I was first posting everything, it was mainly local. So the people who would see my work would be people who were local to this area. And my work was just getting shared around locally. So I had a lot of people, East Coast of Canada, and then also kind of like middle of Canada, Ontario, Toronto area, because a lot of people from the East Coast moved there, and then Alberta, because a lot of people from the East Coast moved to Alberta too. So that was mostly the audience who was seeing my work, and I was just organically sharing about what I was doing and the images I was creating.
Yeah. And so from then on, that's become your business now, and that is what you're known for primarily, isn't it? And that's what you teach. So tell us, you've got a membership, haven't you, now, and you teach other people to take nightscape photography.
Yeah, I've got a lot. It was an interesting shift. So I did my first in-person Milky Way classes when I was pregnant with my daughter. I remember doing them in June. I had my daughter in September, but she was late. So I was fairly pregnant. And like in nightscape photography, often like your tripod's quite low to the ground. So here I am like super pregnant and be like, okay, down here and let's look at the LCD anyways. It was quite funny. But actually one of the students who I met then, she's now a crazy good friend of mine. She lives down the road. We go out shooting together all the time. She's retired. And she was like, if you ever want someone to go and shoot with, and I was like, okay. Anyway, she's a very, very good friend now. And she and I go out and shoot together quite often. So I taught that in person. And then I went on maternity leave with my daughter. It was the end of August 2019. So my daughter turned 6 months in March of 2020, which will be a date that many people will have a lot of internalized reactions to. It has significance. My significance is that at 6 months, babies are allowed to start eating food. And at that point, I am no longer the sole food source. So I was like, okay, to my husband, I was on a year maternity leave. I said, why don't I start running ads, and I'll run one of my in-person photography classes. And I started my ads, which normally I would run some Facebook ads locally, and that would bring people in to my in-person classes. And I remember sitting at the table and looking at Brian, and I'm like, I haven't had a single inquiry off of my ads, and they've been running for a few days now. I was like, you think it's this whole COVID thing? Anyways, we all know how that ended. So then I decided at that point that I would bring my night photography classes online. I had been thinking about it. I had taken an online program to learn about how to do that. All of the things. But up until this point, I taught lots of photography. Like I taught beginners photography. I taught, I just, because I've done it all, I'm like, oh, I can teach anything. Yeah. And then I was like, why don't I just try it? Why don't I just see if I could teach Milky Way photography online? Maybe people would buy a class on that. And people did. So I did a whole launch event around it. Going into what was then called my Milky Way Photography Masterclass. Now it's called Milky Way Magic. And I brought in, I think it was 26 people that first time. And I was like, whoa, hold on a second. Are you kidding me? Now, I brought them all in. Then I had to create the course. And that was fun. That was home. So I have a 6-month-old and a 3.5-year-old at home. We can't go anywhere. So there were some very strict regulations here in Nova Scotia. Like I literally could not go to a park if I couldn't walk to it. Like you stay in your neighborhood, you don't leave your neighborhood, you leave, you get a huge fine. So I'm home with the kids all day long. Like we're here. My husband fortunately is able to work from home. And somehow now I have 26 people coming into this course that I didn't necessarily think I was going to be able to sell. And now I have to make it. And so I would get the kids down at 8 p.m. I would work from 8 p.m. until midnight. That was my daughter's first feed her, get her back to bed. And then I would work again until 2 a.m.
Oh, wow.
And then I would get up with the kids in the morning. My husband thought I was legit crazy. Like we had probably some of the biggest fights of our relationship. And we've been together for, well, now it's like almost, I think we're going on 18 years now. We've been together for quite a while. Because he was just like, you're on maternity leave. There's a pandemic. What are you doing? Why are you working yourself to the bone? And I was like, you don't get it. Like I can see what this could be. And so that was a very insane time in my life. And then I was due to go back off maternity leave in August. I looked at my husband and I was like, I just made $7,000 in a week. I was like, that's crazy. Like last year, I only made, I think the year before teaching, I made like $9,000 in 6 months. I was like, I almost made what I make in half a year because I only worked for half a year before I went on maternity leave. And I was like, if I could just do that again, I was like, then it would be, you know what I mean? And so I said, like, just let me try. I'll do the exact same thing I just did. And I'll do it in July. And so I did it and it made $11,000. And I was like, come on, are you kidding me? And so I didn't go back to my job. I said, you know what? Even if I don't make as much money as I made before, because I was being paid quite well for the job that I was in the industry and the location that I'm in. I said to myself, even if I don't make back to my salary, I can be home with the kids. Like if there are lockdowns, if there are shutdowns, like I can be here. And so I put in my notice and I went to my art director. She's like, I knew you weren't coming back. And I was like, okay, thanks. She's just a wonderful woman. And then it all just went from there. So, because of that, there is a Milky Way season. I won't go too down this rabbit hole, but basically it's like March to October. The Milky Way is visible in the night sky. During the rest of the year, it's up in the day, how we rotate around the sun. So you can't actually see it. So then I was like, what am I going to teach people now? I can't teach Milky Way photography. So I started teaching Photoshop, which is the very first thing I started teaching at Nassau University all these years ago. And then I also teach a highly specialized course on using a star tracker, which is a very specialized piece of equipment, and I won't bore you with the details on that. And then teaching all of this, then my students are like, well, we're creating images that are so good, people want to buy them. How do I sell it? And I was like, that is a much bigger conversation than we have in this hour and a half Q&A today. Like I can't completely answer all of that. And then my students kept asking me, and I said, okay, fine. And so I started my membership, which is called the Shoot to Sell Society. And it is all about being able to sell your work, which is also concurrently through this whole process. I also took the leap to be like, well, I'm going to start selling my prints too, because I did that before I took my Milky Way photography online. I tried to sell landscape photography prints and it didn't go that well.
Yeah.
didn't go super well. No, for many reasons. I could go over all the reasons here, but I sold like a handful of $50 prints basically in my first ever print sale that I did. And now, my work is up in galleries now, and I do limited edition runs, which is a thing that many photographers do because there's a photograph can be printed and reprinted multiple times. So where's the value?
Yeah.
On it. And, now most of my work that's up in galleries is between 1,500 and 2,000 for the pieces that are up in galleries now, which is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool thing. I like it.
Lots of people are probably wondering, how did you jump from $50 to, up to 2,000? Like what do you think contributed towards that increase? And I know there's probably lots of factors, but what were the maybe one to three factors?
Yeah, there certainly are lots of factors. And it was not like it didn't happen like that. You know what I mean? It's not like, it's like, oh, I sold this and now I'm selling this. There was the figuring out my specific niche of Milky Way photography, but also like not just that, my approach to the niche and why I'm doing it. Anyone who's listened to me talk about anything at any point will know I talk about why we're doing it. Why are we creating? Why am I picking up the camera? Why am I going to these places? Why am I being the crazy lady running around with her dog in the middle of the night and on back roads and nowhere in Nova Scotia, you know? What is the reason for that? And actually digging into it, and like you touched earlier on like inner child and things, like all of that comes into it. Knowing that, and then being able to communicate that in different bits and pieces across whenever I'm communicating with people. That piece was really big. And then also the visibility piece. So actually showing up and being visible to people. And so part of that was growing my business in the education side. I became a lot more visible to a lot more people, and I got a lot more used to it and the ability just to communicate about my work. So it was really knowing what the work was and why, you know, people would call it like your USP, your unique selling proposition, but like, why is what I'm doing special to me? And then being able to communicate that, and then actually being visible in front of people. And that is actually how I was able to get into the gallery that I'm in now. They actually reached out to me. I had it on my list that year. So the year January, I write down all my goals, right? And I had this particular local gallery on my list. I was talking with a friend of mine that I graduated from university with, and I was like, you know, she's been exhibiting since. She's a jeweler, and she's been in the gallery circuit. And I was like, well, I'm looking at these galleries. And she's like, no, this one. This is the one that you want to. So I started following them on social media. I started just like, you know, I went into the gallery a few times. I didn't go in even and be like, hey, I'm Kristine, I do this. No, like I just went in and like, you know, was kind of around, and I posted on their social media. And the owner of the gallery actually reached out to me and was like, we'd love to do a solo show of your work. And normally that's not necessarily how it goes. Especially with them, normally you get an introduction through other artists and you take part in a group exhibit. So that was really cool. So then when you do that and you are, in this case, I'm very fortunate because I'm now going into an institution that exists. It's like, okay, well, these are the standard prices. This is what our other artists sell this for. So this is what we sell your work for.
Yeah. And that's when you had that big adjustment in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's finding that right place. And that happened to my friend Sharon actually too, when she first started out, and she's a sculptor. It was when she got into galleries and got then exposed to the people that are investing that amount of money into the work, that she was able to scale the you know, increase the pricing to fit that audience.
Yeah.
It's kind of getting that connection, isn't it?
Exactly.
With the right people. Because a lot of people, I think, ask me, like, how do I get my pricing to go up? I want my pricing to go up. And it is definitely the context of where you put your work and putting it into those places where $2,000 is just accepted. It's like, that's what it's the place where we go, and that's where we spend that money.
I would like to say too, though, because sometimes people hear that and they're like, oh, well, I can't get into a gallery.
Yeah.
I probably could have sold my work for that amount before going into the gallery as well. The work has not changed. I have an artist have not changed. It was just that it's like, that this is what we price things at here. So this is what it is. And that it's just a huge mindset thing, really. For most artists, if you have got your craft to a point where, you know, technically your craft is quite solid in whatever it is, and you have spent the time to think about why you're creating what you're creating, like you can tell people this is the idea, this is the theme behind this. And it's not a theme that, like, you know, someone else who has work that looks like yours would also be saying, right? Like it's not super generic. At that point, your work is really good technically, and you have the thought behind it. Most people can be charging a ton more for their work, but you have to then, if you aren't within like one of the, I call them institutions of art, so galleries and places like that, you just have to then find the people. And that can be hard because you don't necessarily know the way to do that. And galleries do that built in. But it's not that your work isn't worth that outside of a gallery. It's just that you don't necessarily have the resources or the information yet to reach those people, and the gallery can help with that. Or you can learn from people who have done that before. Like there's tons of mentors and people who can help you with that too.
Yeah, and actually, if you know that there's a particular type of gallery, for example, that sell work for that amount, you can learn a lot from the clientele and people that go to that gallery and what they read and where they are and where,
100%.
Yeah, and then
just go there. Just literally go to the gallery. Just be there. Go to the opening nights. Like talk to people who are there. For many artists as introverts, it's like, oh, you want me to go places and talk to people? No. But yeah, actually, yeah, you can learn a ton. Yeah, it's just a fantastic point. Yeah.
And actually, that's a good segue into the book, because that's what the book is all about.
Yes, I love it.
In fact, Kristine, I want to come back to that whole conversation about Your Art Matters and end on this. It's been such a really, really amazing insight. I cannot believe we've been talking for an hour. I could literally sit here for another hour and ask you more questions. It's just so lovely to see the full circle. It's not a full circle, is it? You're still on the circle, but you know what I mean? It's like
I'm going around though. It's okay.
Yeah. Because I think people often see people like yourself and doing so well, and so it's so nice to hear the moving parts and the long game, and you trusting your intuition, and how external factors influenced where you are now. And I do think a lot of it sometimes is the long game, and that we have to keep taking those steps. And if somebody could have shown you years ago where you'd be now, it just wouldn't have, crossed your mind, would it, that you'd be in the night sky photographing the Milky Way? And so I just love hearing your story, because it reminds us to trust the process, to trust where we're going. All the dots will add up. There's that lovely Steve Jobs quote of, when you feel called to do something, rather than get in your own head and go, oh, this isn't going to sell, or this wouldn't work. It's go for it. And I want to come back to that, Kristine, as we wrap up, about the moments that you've spoken about, why your art matters. And you said you turned to go out in the night and photograph instead of sleep, and that was the sensible, practical thing to do. But you felt that urge. And can we just finish on that, about why this matters to you, and why your photography and going out at night feeds your soul? I know it's really hard to describe, isn't it? It's personal.
It's hard, but I get chills as you're saying it, because it's my exact reason is not going to be the same as anyone else listening, but there will be a lot of similarities in it. And to your point earlier, it is this intuition about, or rather following our intuition and actually listening to it. I think that in our society, we don't necessarily have the value attached to our intuition that maybe we could. And so when we come back to this idea of like, why does it matter? All of it is who I am. Being able to create is the way that I am able to interact and process being an existing human in this world. Really, like art is the way that I can process what's happening. It is also the way that I can then use it as a vehicle to have conversations with other people. And it's the thing that keeps me going at all points. It's the thing that's always there. And it's fantastic that it resonates with lots of people. I love that. I love that I get to hang out with people and do it, but I would be doing it anyways. Like there's no part of me that would stop doing this if it stops becoming something that makes money. I'm still going to be doing it. I'm still going to be creating, because it's the way that I can keep going as a person. I need it. It's part of who I am. Yeah.
Love it. Your art matters, everybody.
It does. It really does. It does.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. There's lots of people just saying congratulations as well. And I think we should just take a minute to congratulate Kristine on the amazingness that you have created, and you are living your life on purpose, by design, and you have done all the things, the amazing things, and now you're impacting all the other people through your own courses, and it's incredible.
It's pretty wild, I have to say. There isn't a day that goes by and I'm like, I just like a girl in my basement in middle of nowhere, Nova Scotia, just hanging out, like taking pictures in my garden earlier, and then it's like, we're like, oh, like yeah, anyways, it's really amazing. And the fact that I get to do this, and get to hang out with people online and get to hang out with awesome people like you, Michelle, like it still blows my mind. And I'm grateful for it every day. Yeah, it's really
your
amazing.
Job. What a cool job.
It's the coolest. It really is. It's really hard to describe to random people, but it's okay. I still love it.
Yeah, that one, what you do for a living is like, yeah.
How long do you have? Where are we going to get it?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. So KristineRosePhotography.com is where you can go and learn more about Kristine. Also on Facebook, there's a Facebook page with the same name as well. If you are listening to the podcast, all the links will be in the show notes if you want to go and check out Kristine. And also you've got some exciting things coming up, haven't you? So should we just mention those? You've got an in-person event coming up, and you've also got I'll let you just say it.
Yes. Yeah. So I have a few things coming up. My whole year kind of got rejigged. I am, in a week's time, will be in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia with 90 of my students from across the world who are coming for an in-person conference. So that is going to be amazing. I have some other things coming up, but I haven't announce them yet, Michelle.
Okay, so
that's okay. I've hinted towards the fact that I'm probably going to do them. I have Milky Way training coming up. That is something I've never done that will be really exciting. But it doesn't exist yet. I can't point people to a place for it because it is in the works. But it'll be super fun, and it will be something to in the next new moon cycle. So we're coming into a new moon cycle now. It's not this one, it will be the next one. So those who are my Milky Way students they'll have an idea of timing on that, but that's going to be late August into September. Yeah.
Exciting. And then Kristine also has a free resource too. There's the boot camp. So if you put in the KristineRosePhotography.com/bootcamp, again, the link will be in the show notes if you're tuning in and listening to this. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. This is lovely. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for everyone tuning in. We will go back through your comments if you've asked any questions and go over those. So thank you once again, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.